I mean, I have a very strange musical background because I grew up studying music theory and playing classical music. And then when I was 13, I started playing in punk rock bands. And then I was a hip-hop DJ for a while, and I DJ'd house music, and I played a lot of dance hall reggae, and I've been involved in all these different genres of music. And one of the things I'm really grateful for is the fact that, you know, I can go into my studio and just work on whatever type of music appeals to me at that time. And I also love the fact that, you know, sometimes I go out and DJ, sometimes I go out and play live. You know, sometimes I'll do an acoustic set with just a guitar, or sometimes it's, you know, playing old house music vinyl for a few hundred people in a dirty nightclub. So I feel very fortunate that I have the opportunity to do all these different things. I mean, I started DJing in 1984, and New York in the 80s was a really interesting place because it was very dangerous. You had like crack epidemics and, you know, the AIDS epidemic, and crime was rampant. But the dance scene in the 80s in New York was really interesting because it was so multicultural. You know, you go to clubs and they'd be gay and straight and black and white and Latino, and everybody just sort of coming together to listen to house music and hip hop and just have a wonderful time. And in the early 90s, when I really started traveling more and putting out records, it was the beginning of the rave scene, and it was great. I mean, like, it was just really, really exciting. You know, you go to these raves and you'd have 10,000 people throwing their hands in the air to, you know, these big techno records with these great piano breakdowns, so it was an amazing time. My favorite part of a rave or a night out is that moment, usually around like 1 o'clock in the morning, when a DJ just plays a record that either you've never heard before or that you're surprised that they're playing, and everybody has that collective experience where they're just like, they throw their hands in the air, and at that moment, it's like no one can remember ever being happier. So, you know, it's those moments where it's almost like time stops and there's no past and there's no future. It's just that moment where you have like 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 people sort of like bonded in like, you know, dance music solidarity. I think the most important thing is for someone who's making records to make records that they love and that hopefully other people love as well. I mean, I'm glad that although I'm sort of an electronic music producer, I'm also a musician and I have a very sort of formal musical education. But a lot of great records get made by people who have no formal musical education. And, you know, you can have a classically trained musician making great records, or you can have someone who knows nothing about music making great records. At the end of the day, all that matters, again, is that the emotional reaction of the listener.
Well, the reason is because when people see like DJ Tiesto, they think, oh, he's a DJ. But you know, of course I am a DJ, but there's much more to it.
Right.
Tiesto is like a band almost. You know, I have a lot of people behind the scenes who are building the stage and who do the production, the lights, the visuals. And also in the studio, you know, I work with several people.
Right.
So I thought Tiesto would be more appropriate than just call it DJ Tiesto.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. On a regular night I play like 3 hours. Sometimes 4, like tonight I play 4 hours.
Great.
And that's a good amount, and that's pretty easy. You know, you have like 10,000 people in front of you.
Feed off them.
Yeah, and sometimes I did a couple of stadium shows, and I played for 9 hours. I started at 10 in the evening till 7 in the morning.
Wow.
And it's not that hard. I mean, I don't have to sing. I mean, when you're a singer, it's different. And I'm a DJ in that way that you can just, you know, play longer tracks, and
True.
you build up the night. You start at 10. You start building slowly, and then at 1 o'clock you have the peak till 5, then the after show for 2 hours.
That's neat.
It's not something I could do every night, but
It happens.
a couple of times a year,
Yeah.
it's all good.
And is that
I mean, I don't really care if people know how I look like, to be honest. I mean, it's more for me about the music,
get the show out?
and yeah, that people get the music. No, I was practicing at home. Yeah, I was listening to DJs on the radio mixing tracks together.
Right.
And then they had this certain noise, it's like a jet stream noise. And you get that when you have two of the same records and mix them together. So I had 2 tracks of the same track,
Right.
and just mixing it together, and then you get the jet stream underneath. It's like a flanger kind of noise.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's how I practiced, because and you have to keep them tight, and then
Yeah.
you have that sound. That's how I learned how to mix.
Oh, that's neat.
Well, Roskilde Festival in Europe is really great to be at.
Right.
I'm gonna play at Rock am Rio. It's actually in Madrid, this version.
Oh, great.
It's normally in Rio de Janeiro, of
Right.
course, but it's called Rock am Rio, and they're gonna go global now. And that's a big festival, and yeah, you have many around the world. And what I like about the festivals nowadays is that they get dance music involved.
Right.
So there's always a
Yeah.
dance music part of it, and they ask me a lot of times now for festivals, which is great
Yeah.
because it exposes me to a whole new audience.
For sure. Yeah. Gets the awareness. And any new artists?
Wow, this is why I'm doing that job.
Yeah.
First, first of all, I'm very happy that my music is crossing over now. But the reason I'm doing this, the reason why I am a DJ, is this kind of club. Like crazy sound system, dark vibe, everybody like raving and so excited about the music. And I was like, yeah, this is gonna be a good night. I got a feeling, you know what I mean? So it was just amazing. It's just, it was much more intimate, and people that are really into electronic music and DJ culture. It was great. I loved it. So first I put out When Love Takes Over, and it went amazing. So I was like, okay, I got to do the album. And on the same week, Will I Am Call Me asked me to produce tracks for the Black Eyed Peas album. And we got along so well. It was fantastic. I mean, with Kelly, amazing with him. And I was like, that's the direction I want to take. That really that idea of electronic music from Europe meets urban culture from America. And that day, I'm on stage in England for Radio 1 Festival.
Okay.
And I go off the stage and I see Akon. And Akon is like, David, finally, first, I was in love with Love Is Gone. This is my favorite track. And now you again with When Love Takes Over, you need to wait for me. I want to work with you. So I'm like, wow, it's super, So I was waiting for him. And he got off the stage. And we're like, okay, come on, let's go to the studio together and, see what's going to happen. So we went to the studio together on the same night. He was leaving to America the day after. And on that very same night, we met Sexy Bitch. So I called my record company. I'm like, stop everything. I have this track. It's a monster track. You need to wait for that. And they're like, David, are you crazy? We cannot change the schedule. I'm like, I don't care. We changed the schedule. I want that track in the album.
It had to be on the album. Yeah.
So that's the story. Well, listen, it's been an incredible experience because I was coming. It's not like I'm trying to be hip hop.
Yeah.
It's more like they're coming into my world. So, because I think it's very weird right now because after this album, I've got lots of hip hop artists that are calling me to produce, and I was never trying to be a hip hop producer. So it's kind of strange for me because the concept of this album is really all those geniuses from the urban world coming into the electro world.
Yeah.
So really, I was doing my thing, and they were doing their thing, and it was just like the best of both worlds together. And it's like 1 + 1 is 3. We made something bigger because we were together, because the kind of idea that I come with, they wouldn't come with, and what they bring, I could never bring. So it was just that, and we were so enthusiastic in the studio. We were like kids. Like, I remember that first day with Will I Am. First, I was shaking. because you know I usually work in home studios.
You were shaking. I'm sure he was shaking.
Like my legs were like, you know, because I come to that studio and I was not used to work in a real huge studio like this. You know, I work with my laptop on tour. I work in little studios, but in all a second I was in that legendary studio in Los Angeles, and the Black Eyed Peas are there, and this huge SSL board. I'm like, I don't even know if I can use this, you know. So I was really nervous and impressed, you know. And everybody was coming to say hello in the studio. Perfect came, and Busta Rhymes came, and Pharrell Williams was there. Everybody was, and I'm like, oh my God.
And it's all eyes on you, right?
Yeah, my first day in the studio was them, you know. It was too much pressure, but it went really well. And after that, we kind of stayed after hour and worked on my tracks, and we had so much fun, you know. It was really exciting, and we were like jumping around in the studio and dancing.
Yeah.
We were like having a party there, you know. And this is why all those other artists were coming to hang out, because it was just, we were having fun, you know. And I think that because we had so much fun
in the studio,
people are
resonated.
having fun listening to it, you know, because it was very much of a moment of musical freedom. You know, we didn't stay in our boxes. We really we were trying things, and we're like, wow, we're making the music of tomorrow. This is so exciting. And speaking with Will, how we gonna call this? Okay, we're gonna call it electro hop. You know that moment where you like, wow, we got something.
You're like
different.
creating a genre almost.
Yeah, exactly. We were like, I mean, I'm not the only one to go into that direction, but a whole album like this, I think it was something pretty new. Yeah,
Absolutely. So there's got to be like.
Will calls me and says, I want you in the video for the I Got a Feeling. So I took a plane from Paris to Los Angeles. It's a long ride, and I made a track on the plane, but not because I was going there. I always make music when I'm off, so that's how I relax, and it's just like another guy would watch a movie. I take my laptop and do a beat, you know. So I made that really, I was experimenting some plugins and stuff, and I made that really dirty beat. I didn't know I was gonna make Kid Cudi. Then we're shooting the video, and Will is like, oh, you're having the scene with Kid Cudi, meet David, and I'm like, oh my God, I love your song so much, that's crazy. And between two shots, I'm like, you know what? I just made that beat on the plane coming here. You might like it. And it was so simple.
You might like it, yeah.
You know, it just listen to it like, I love it. I'll meet you tomorrow at 3 o'clock at the studio. So you see, everything was like this. It's not like I tried to meet him, you know, like my manager, you know, called another manager. It was really like
The snowball effect, everything
exactly,
just kept going, right?
and also obviously the word of mouth, because Kelly Rowland and Will were talking really in a really nice way about me.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of artists call me, and we did that swap deal every time. Like I will produce tracks for them, and they feature on my album.
Yeah.
Well, I started as a DJ, and then the only way for me at the time to be able to play my music without the boss telling me what to do was to promote my own night. So I started to be a promoter because I wanted to play house music, and then I became one of the biggest promoter and club owner in Paris. And finally, I came back to my old love, which is DJing and making music, and I'm living my teenager dream and traveling the world, having fun, you know, living out of my hobby. I started to DJ when I was a teenager, and that was even before house music existed. And I would never have dreamt that I could be what I am today, and neither any other DJ, because it was a totally different thing. You could not imagine filling a club and, of course, a stadium with DJs headlining. It was impossible at the time. So it was, you would, you know, really do this job out of passion and wanted to share this passion with people, because there was no fame, no money for nobody in this job. That's different, you know. A lot of kids, they want to do that. They're like same age than when I started, you know, 13, 15, and they want to be football player or model or DJ, because it's like, okay, that's kind of a rock star life, and this, but I don't think it's the right reason to do it, you know. It's about the music for me, and it was and it's still the same. No doubt today, if you want to have a global career, you have to produce music, because otherwise, you know, you can do what I've done, like creating a reputation in your city, in your country, but if you want to go global, it has to go through production. There's no other way. For me, house music house music is about love. It was, and it is, and it will be, I think. But obviously, it's much harder than when it started. You know, the sound it's more a mixture of techno, electro, and house now. You know, I think the barriers are really falling now, and you can hear there's this kind of mix of different sounds into it. Whereas at first, maybe it was more like, if you listen to classic house music, it was really more like a new form of disco. And now there's lots of different influences getting into it. That's what I do, at least, and I love that.
When I was younger, when I first kind of got into this and was just buying studio gear, you know, whatever, more than 10 years ago now, it was more from a sound design aspect, kind of like creating and programming beats and finding samples and kind of like warping sounds to try and make a soundscape. That's how I started out. But later on, I realized kind of that's what a lot of people were doing. They're really relying heavily on like the computer to kind of like shape and mold their sound. Right. And when I moved to San Francisco, I realized like there was an opportunity to try something that was more musical and to really kind of, you know, write lyrics, write more song-based stuff, try something that's more melodic instead of more rhythmic. Because everybody was doing this, and I'm like, man, if I'm gonna set myself apart and try to be my own artist, I can't be doing what everyone's doing. So I really kind of set out as more of a songwriter. I mean, I think most people think dance music is very European. Like, in Europe, man, this stuff's on the radio, and it's like, dude, it's cool to see some North American artists coming together and kind of getting their moment. And I mean, that's something cool for both Deadmau5 and I, that it's like, ah, man, it's cool, kind of like mother country, you know, it's cool to collaborate and kind of shine some light on what's going on over here, because there's a great scene here in Toronto. Is amazing. I mean, Government's going to be going off tonight. It's a great club, and I play here 2-3 times a year, you know, at various clubs, and I always have a great time. So there's an amazing scene here in North America that we can be proud of, you know. I think a lot of people are kind of want to shy away from that, and it's like, nah, dude, I've traveled all over the world, and I mean, yes, Europe, Ibiza, there's some amazing things happening outside of here, but we have a cool thing going on here too, so.
Yeah, and it
seems like here in North America, we're always a little bit like hesitant, because dance music isn't so socially acceptable here as it might be in other places in the world. But, I mean, doesn't that make it cooler? Do we really want this stuff so accessible that there's no difference between, like, you know, right, Hannah Montana and Cascade? I mean, no, it's cool that we have our own little niche, whatever, you know. I think we have a really cool thing carved out for ourselves, like a cool community of people that enjoy music and are really pushing the envelope and trying new styles and new sounds, and, you know, just out there like cutting a new way. Yeah.
when we started in like '99, a remix of a track was often quite exciting. There'd be like Armand van Helden was great like that. You'd have like a rock record, and there'd be the dance mix, where they'd take a tiny little bit and play it backwards, and you go, oh, wicked! It sounds nothing like the song. How great and creative! Now, with every song that comes out, every rock song, there'll be 10 mixes. There'll be like banging drum and bass mix. There'll be a dubstep mix. There'll be like back room electro bleep mix. There'll be big room. So suddenly there's a lot. As a DJ, all these DJ tools are available all the time. So I think the whole remix thing has slightly been devalued from. It was quite an exciting, creative sort of area, and people are still being creative with it. But I think there's just such a volume of stuff now, and yeah, the whole kind of the dancing is all grown up. I mean, it was like rock music before. Probably when we started doing Basement Jaxx, rock music was very grown up. There was every style of rock music, and therefore it kind of all become a bit safe and boring. Dance music has become like that. Right. I think there's a resurgence of like young kids kind of putting things on their head a bit, and definitely with stuff like dubstep. Some of that's really creative, and it's kind of not doing what was done before, so that's great. I think house as a thing is kind of, I mean, for me in the UK with electronic music, house doesn't really exist anymore. Yeah, there's new stuff that is 4/4, there's some of it's 126 BPM. You can play Baltimore next to minimalist German stuff from Berlin. I mean, you can play funky house, which is, you know, kind of got more kind of soakery beats to it. You can play old school house. You can play fidget. I suppose, yeah, maybe house is still low because it's fidget house, but fidget house might go drum and bass in the middle, and then it might go hip hop for a bit. The tempos all change because people with the Ableton and Traktor and Serato, all these different things are repitched. Different tempos come into play, so it's a lot freer probably than it was. But having said that, I think right at the beginning of house music, that's how it was anyway. If you listen to new groove records or stuff like that I was first listening to, you'd have rock in a track, there'd be a break beat, one track would be slow. It'd still be kind of house, but it didn't matter then because people didn't have any rules. So now I think we've got to a stage where actually the rules are all out the window a bit, which is wicked. It's great. It's kind of, which means it's still evolving and being alive.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose kind of, yeah, the house music as it was is how longer, I don't know, fits into the modern world. You know, Beyonce and Rihanna, they're kind of more or less doing how people in house music used to do. They'll do a 4/4 track with a bass line, a bleep, and a soul vocal on it. Maybe it hasn't got the depth of like the original Chicago tracks, because that was all about messages of, you know, like, we're from the underground, we're the fringes of society, we want to express ourselves but our voices can't be heard. You know, it's kind of all the people that don't fit in, you know, the Beyoncés and Jay-Z's are all part of the system, you know, they're Obama's entertainment or whatever, you know what I mean? And so that's the way there's this world pop music now, and I mean, I think for us, we still don't, well, personally, I don't feel completely comfortable in there. It's lovely to be there, but I still feel a link with the people over there who don't count.
Yeah.
We were a bit behind. Well, we had an Atari and 2 samplers.
Right.
And all our vocals we had to record onto a DAT tape. We'd do a session, record the whole session onto a DAT tape. Then when they'd gone, we'd listen back to the DAT tape and sample the lines we wanted, and then play them into the sequencer. Whereas then, you know, then we called up with the world, and you can actually just do it all straight into the machine.
Right.
But so we were a bit behind.
So that's analog right there.
So it was very basic, our setup before, and it still is really.
It's interesting, you know, we've been doing this quite a long time now, and the early sort of acid house days have come right back around. It kind of, you know, house music started in small basements and warehouses. It got bigger and bigger and bigger until DJs were taking up really inappropriate slots on like altars in these huge amphitheatres. That's just not what a house is about. Unfortunately for everyone, that's kind of fallen apart more or less, and well, back to where we started, you know, in places like this, small, loud and dark, which is what it should be all about. In a way, we've gone full circle. As I was saying before, it all got kind of big and epic and overblown, and now we're going back to where house music works, and it's nice to have been there at the beginning and the end of that journey.